3 months later, Captain So-min stood on the observation deck of Earth's largest orbital station, watching the Indomitable undergo her final repairs. The old cruiser looked different now. Her hull gleamed with new armor plating, and her weapons had been upgraded to the latest standards, but she was still the same ship that had held the line at Kepler Junction. "She looks good as new," Admiral Tejo said, joining So-min at the viewport. "Better than new," So-min replied. "But she's still the same ship underneath, the same heart." Through the massive windows they could see Earth turning slowly below them, the blue and green world that had given birth to humanity, protected all along by a star that the Vorthak could never approach. "Have you read the final reports from the liberated worlds?" Tejo asked. So-min nodded. 1,200 planets freed, 6 million humans rescued from Vorthak biofarms, and not a single organized Vorthak fleet left in 3 sectors. The xenobiologists are making progress with the individual survivors too. Some of them are learning to think for themselves. It's slow work, but they're becoming real individuals instead of parts of a collective. So-min thought about the World Eater, last seen drifting toward the outer rim of the galaxy. Alone, confused, but no longer a threat to anyone. In some ways, she felt sorry for it. "Captain So-min, report to Docking Bay 7, the station's communication system announced. "Your crew is assembled for departure." So-min took one last look at Earth, her home world, the center of human civilization, the planet protected by a star that happened to emit exactly the right frequency to scramble hive-mind communications. Sometimes the universe had a sense of humor. "Time to go, Admiral." "Good hunting, Captain. The frontier needs ships like the Indomitable out there, keeping the peace." So-min made her way to the docking bay, where her crew waited beside their restored ship. They all looked different now. Hyejin wore the insignia of a chief engineer first class and had been offered positions on a dozen different vessels, but she had chosen to stay with the Indomitable. Jae-sung had been promoted to Marine Major, and his reputation for holding impossible positions had made him a legend in the Corps. Dongwoo now wore Lieutenant Commander stripes and had turned down a position at the Naval Academy to remain as the ship's navigation officer. Bora had been offered a posting at Fleet Communications Headquarters, but preferred the deep space assignments that came with serving on an independent cruiser. Sun Woo had received offers from the finest medical facilities in human space, but he stayed with his shipmates. And Kyung-soo, now a full commander, had been offered his own ship 3 times but remained at his tactical station. They had all been offered safer, more prestigious assignments. They had all chosen to stay together. "Crew assembled and ready for departure, Captain," Jae-sung reported with a crisp salute. "Thank you, Major. Let's get underway." They walked together up the gangway into their ship. The Indomitable's corridors hummed with quiet efficiency, her systems running perfectly after the extensive refit. But she still felt like home. On the bridge, everything was familiar, yet new. The same stations where they had fought for their lives, now equipped with the most advanced technology the colonial navy could provide. "Navigation, set course for the Vega sector," So-min ordered as she settled into her command chair. "We have a diplomatic mission to the Centauri Council." "Course laid in, Captain," Dongwoo reported. "Ready to depart on your order." So-min looked around her bridge one more time, at the crew that had become her family, at the ship that had become their home, at the stars that waited beyond the viewport. The galaxy was different now. The Vorthak Empire was gone, broken by a frequency that matched the light of Earth's sun. Worlds were free. Species that had been enslaved were building new lives, and humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but by standing firm when others could not. "Bora, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them the Indomitable is departing on schedule." "Message sent, Captain." "Hyejin, reactor status?" "All systems green, ma'am. She's purring like a kitten." Jae-sung, Marine complement? 47 Marines aboard and ready for anything, Captain. Sunwoo Medical Bay? Fully stocked and hoping for a quiet cruise, ma'am. Kyung-soo weapon systems? All weapons online and ready, Captain. Though I hope we don't need them. So-min smiled. They were ready. Not just for this mission, but for whatever the galaxy might throw at them. They had learned something important at Kepler Junction. Sometimes one ship, with the right crew at the right moment, could change everything. "All stations report ready, ma'am," Dongwu announced. "Then let's show the galaxy what the Indomitable can do in peacetime. Take us out, navigation officer." The old cruiser turned slowly away from Earth's orbital station, her engines coming online with a gentle rumble that could be felt through the deck plates. Outside the viewports, the stars waited. As they cleared the station's docking area, Somin thought about a phrase that had become popular since the Battle of Kepler Junction. Whenever someone was facing impossible odds, whenever the situation seemed hopeless, people would say, "Hold the line like the Indomitable." It meant standing firm when everything seemed lost. It meant doing your duty even when you knew the cost. It meant that sometimes, if you refuse to back down, you can change the course of history. "Captain, we're clear of Earth's orbital traffic," Dongwu reported, ready to jump to hyperspace. "Make the jump," Somin ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the Indomitable leaped across space toward new adventures. Behind them, Earth's sun continued to shine, protecting humanity's homeworld with the same light that had saved the galaxy. In the months and years that followed, the Indomitable would carry diplomats to peace conferences, provide aid to recovering worlds, and explore new regions of space opened by the fall of the Vorthok Empire. But she would always be remembered first for the day when one old ship held the line against an empire. They had conquered worlds with ease, those alien creatures from the deep galaxy. They had swept across 3 sectors like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They had seemed unstoppable, inevitable, the end of all free life among the stars, until they met a single human vessel that refused to let them pass. The line had held. The galaxy remained free. And somewhere in the archives of a dozen species, the story was recorded for future generations. How the crew of an old cruiser named Indomitable discovered that sometimes the greatest victories come not from advancing, but from standing firm when everyone else has given up. The stars were safe. Humanity sailed among them with pride. And in the deep space between worlds, one refitted cruiser continued her patrol, ready to hold the line whenever the galaxy needed her. The Indomitable sailed on, and the universe was better for her passage. The solar frequency pulse rippled across the galaxy like a stone thrown into still water. On the mining world of Kepler 442, human colonists watched in amazement as their Vorthok guards suddenly began attacking each other. The biomechanical creatures that had controlled every aspect of life for 3 months turned into confused animals, fleeing into the wilderness or collapsing where they stood. In the Rigel system, Admiral Chen received reports that stunned her command staff. Vorthok bioships that had been methodically harvesting the outer planets were now drifting without power. When her patrol boats approached them, the alien vessels immediately surrendered. Across 3 sectors, the same story repeated itself. The empire that had conquered worlds with terrifying efficiency crumbled in hours. But aboard the drifting Indomitable, the crew fought a different battle. With no reactor and failing life support, they had to keep themselves alive long enough for rescue ships to arrive. "Environmental report," Somin called from her command chair. Sunwoo checked his readings. "Oxygen levels are dropping faster than expected. We have maybe 4 hours before we start suffocating." "What about the escape pods?" "Half of them were damaged in the battle. The others don't have enough range to reach a safe system." Hyejin pulled herself up to the bridge, her leg bandaged where falling debris had struck her. "I might be able to restart one of the backup fusion plants. It won't give us main power, but it could keep life support running." "How long would that take?" 3 hours if everything goes perfectly, and that's a big if." Somin looked around her bridge. Her crew was exhausted, wounded, and running out of air, but they were alive. And more importantly, they had given the galaxy a fighting chance. "Do it," she said. "Jae-sung, take your Marines and help her. Everyone else, start shutting down non-essential systems. We need to conserve every bit of power we have." As her crew worked to save their ship, Somin watched the long-range sensors. The World Eater still floated at the edge of the system, but it was no longer the terrifying predator that had swallowed fleets. Without the hive mind, it seemed, lost, almost sad. Bora, are we getting any signals from that thing? The communications officer adjusted her equipment. Nothing coherent, ma'am, just random bioelectrical patterns like it's trying to communicate but doesn't know how. Maybe it never learned, Dongwu suggested. If it was part of a hive mind its entire life, it might not know how to think for itself. So Min felt an unexpected stab of pity for the creature. The World Eater was a monster, responsible for the deaths of millions, but now it was just a confused animal, cut off from everything it had ever known. 2 hours later, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Oxygen levels had dropped to dangerous levels, and crew members were starting to show signs of hypoxia. "Hi Jin, how's that backup reactor?" So Min called over the intercom. "Almost there, Captain. Just need to align the magnetic containment fields. Give me 20 more minutes." "We don't have 20 minutes. Sun Wu was moving between stations, administering oxygen supplements from the medical emergency supplies. "I can buy us maybe another hour, but after that people are going to start passing out." Kyung-soo slumped over his tactical console. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Human ships approaching fast." So-min felt hope surge in her chest. "How long until they reach us?" 47 minutes. The mathematics were brutal. They had maybe 1 hour of breathable air left. The rescue ships would arrive in 47 minutes. If Hyejin could restart the backup reactor in time, they would live. If not, they would die just minutes before help arrived. "All hands, this is the captain," So-min announced. "Rescue is on the way. We need to hold on for 47 more minutes. Reduce all physical activity. Conserve your oxygen. We're going to make it." But even as she said the words, she wondered if she believed them. In engineering, Hyejin worked with desperate precision. The backup fusion plant was a much simpler system than the main reactor, designed for emergencies exactly like this one. But it had been offline for so long that many of its components were corroded or damaged. Jae-sung and his Marines helped where they could, but this was engineers' work. Only Hyejin understood the delicate process of restarting a cold fusion reaction. "Magnetic containment at 70%, she muttered, adjusting field generators with hands that shook from oxygen deprivation. Plasma injection in 10 seconds. On the bridge, crew members were starting to collapse. Dongwu fell unconscious at his navigation station. Bora struggled to stay awake at her communications console. Even Sun Wu, who had been moving constantly to treat others, was showing severe signs of hypoxia. 35 minutes to rescue, Kyung-soo announced, his voice barely above a whisper. So-min forced herself to stay alert. As captain, she had to be the last one to succumb. Her crew needed to see her strong, confident, in control, even if she was dying. Hyejin, status report. "Initiating fusion reaction now, Captain. If it works, we'll have power in 5 minutes. If it doesn't..." She didn't finish the sentence. Everyone understood the stakes. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. More crew members lost consciousness. The emergency lighting dimmed as power systems shut down one by one. Then suddenly, the lights came back on. "We have power!" Hyejin's voice echoed through the ship. "Life support is online. We're going to make it." Fresh air began circulating through the ship's ventilation systems. Unconscious crew members stirred as their oxygen-starved brains began to function again. So Min allowed herself a moment of relief. They had survived. Against impossible odds, fighting the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen, they had survived. "Captain, the rescue fleet is hailing us," Bora announced, now fully alert thanks to the restored life support. "Put them through." Admiral Taeho's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity. "Captain So-min, it's good to see you alive. We're going to get you out of there." "Thank you, Admiral. What's the situation in the other sectors?" "Better than we dared hope. The frequency pulse has shattered Vorthak coordination across half the galaxy. Resistance movements are liberating occupied worlds faster than we can count them. The empire that seemed unstoppable 3 days ago is completely broken." Kyung-soo managed a weak smile. "One ship, Admiral. One old cruiser with a dying reactor. One ship with the best crew in the colonial navy. Taeho replied. You held the line when no one else could. The galaxy will remember what happened here. As the rescue ships moved in to assist the Indomitable, So-Min watched the World Eater at the edge of the system. The massive creature was moving slowly toward the outer system, no longer a threat to anyone. Just a lost animal looking for a place to hide. What happens to them now? She asked. The individual Vorthak, I mean. We're studying that, Taeho replied. Without their hive mind, most of them seem to want nothing more than food and safety. Some of the xenobiologists think we might be able to help them develop individual consciousness, turn them from conquerors into just another species sharing the galaxy. So-Min thought about that. The creatures that had been humanity's worst nightmare might someday become neighbors. It was a strange thought, but after everything that had happened, she was ready to believe in strange possibilities. Admiral, permission to make a request. Granted, Captain. When we get back to Earth, I want the Indomitable repaired and returned to service. She's got good years left in her. Taeho smiled. Already approved, Captain. The ship that saved the galaxy deserves to keep sailing among the stars. The overloaded reactor screamed like a dying star. Deep in the Indomitable's engineering section, fusion plasma temperatures spiked beyond all safety limits. But instead of exploding, the reactor did exactly what Hyojin had designed it to do. It pulsed. A wave of solar frequency radiation erupted from the ship's core, washing over the World Eater's gaping mouth just as the creature prepared to swallow them whole. The massive bioship convulsed, as if struck by lightning. Its mouth snapped shut, missing the Indomitable by mere meters. But that was only the beginning. The pulse struck the crystalline asteroids that Kyung-Soo had targeted, and the formations acted like amplifiers. The frequency bounced from crystal to crystal, growing stronger with each reflection. Within seconds, the entire Kepler junction system rang like a bell with solar radiation. The effect on the Vorthak fleet was catastrophic. Bioships throughout the system writhed in agony as their hive mind network shattered. Creatures that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly found themselves alone, cut off from the collective consciousness that had guided them across the galaxy. Bo-Ra, are you getting anything on communications? So-Min asked. The communications officer was barely conscious, blood running down her face from where she had been thrown against her console during the pulse. Checking now, ma'am. I'm reading massive neural disruption across all Vorthak vessels. Their network is completely offline. On the main screen, they watched bioships flee in panic. Some attacked each other in confusion. Others simply drifted, their crews apparently unconscious. The mighty armada that had conquered worlds was falling apart. But the Indomitable was dying too. Engineering report, So-Min called. Hyojin's voice was weak over the intercom. Reactor is offline. Fusion containment. Failed. We're running on emergency batteries and they won't last long. The lights on the bridge flickered and dimmed. Without the reactor, they had no engines, no weapons, no life support beyond what the backup systems could provide. How long? So-Min asked. 6 hours. Maybe 7 if we shut down everything non-essential. Dong-Wu looked up from his navigation station. Captain, the civilian ships made it out. All 32 vessels jumped to safety 3 minutes ago. So-Min felt a wave of relief. Whatever happened to the Indomitable, those 8,000 people, were safe. Families would see each other again, children would grow up. That was worth dying for. Ma'am, I'm getting something on long-range communications, Bo-Ra said. It's Admiral Taeho. The main screen flickered to life. Admiral Taeho's face appeared, but the image was broken and filled with static. Captain So-Min, this is Admiral Taeho. What you did at Kepler Junction, the pulse, it worked. The frequency is propagating through subspace. Vorthak fleets across. 3 sectors are breaking apart. So-Min sat forward in her chair. Across 3 sectors? The pulse hit their command ships first. Without central coordination, the smaller bioships are reverting to basic animal behavior. They're fleeing or attacking each other. Worlds that fell to the Vorthak are reporting that their occupiers have suddenly gone insane. The implications hit So-Min like a physical blow. Their desperate last stand had not just saved the Kepler Junction. It had broken the Vorthak Empire. "Admiral, we need immediate assistance. Our reactor is offline and we're running on emergency power. Help is on the way, Captain. But I need to know how you figured out their weakness." Heejin crawled up from the engineering decks, her uniform torn and stained with coolant fluid. She had been burned by plasma leaks, but she was alive. "It was the frequency, Admiral," she said, taking over the communication. "The old fusion reactors emit radiation that matches Earth's sun. The Vorthak hive mind is sensitive to solar frequencies. It disrupts their neural network." "You're saying they can't approach Earth's solar system?" "That's right, sir. The radiation from Sol would be lethal to their collective consciousness. They probably avoid our entire system because of it." There was silence on the other end of the communication for a long moment. Then Admiral Tae-ho began to laugh. "Do you realize what this means?" he said. "Humanity's birth world isn't just our home, it's our fortress. The very star that gave us life protects us from the greatest threat the galaxy has ever seen." Sunwoo looked up from treating wounded crew members. "There's more, Admiral. I've been studying the bioforms that boarded our ship. When they're cut off from the hive mind, they become simple animals. Scared, confused animals. They're not the monsters we thought," Jae-sung added over the intercom. "Without their collective intelligence, they're just lost creatures looking for food and shelter." So-min watched the tactical display as more Vorthak ships fled the system. The World Eater had retreated to the edge of the asteroid field where it floated motionless. Without the hive mind to guide it, the massive creature seemed to have no idea what to do. "Admiral, what's the status of the other sectors?" "Centauri defense grid is back online. The Vorthak ships that controlled it are drifting without power. Resistance movements on occupied worlds are reporting successful liberation efforts. It's like the entire empire just collapsed overnight." Bora managed a weak smile. "We broke them, didn't we? One old ship with a dying reactor, and we broke an empire. The galaxy owes the Indomitable a debt it can never repay," Admiral Tae-ho said. "But right now I need you to hold position. We're broadcasting the solar frequency from every human ship in the fleet. The effect seems to be permanent. Once their network is shattered, it doesn't reform." "What about the individual bioships? They're not dangerous anymore. Without the hive mind, they can't coordinate attacks or adapt their defenses. We're rounding them up now. Most of them surrender immediately when approached by ships broadcasting the frequency." Kyung-soo shook his head in amazement. 3 months ago they were unstoppable. Now they're running away from a sound. "It's not just a sound," Hyejin said quietly. "It's the frequency of life itself. Earth's sun, the solar radiation that makes our world habitable, the energy that powers our fusion reactors. Everything that makes us human is deadly to them." So-min thought about that. Humanity had spent so long looking at the stars, dreaming of the day they would explore the galaxy. They had never realized that their own star, their own sun, was the key to surviving among those stars. "Captain, rescue ships will reach you in 4 hours," Admiral Tae-ho reported. "The Indomitable will be towed back to Earth for repairs and refit. After what you've done, she deserves to sail again." "Thank you, Admiral." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in the soft glow of emergency lighting. Outside the viewports, the last Vorthak bioships were fleeing toward deep space. The system that had been full of death and terror was quiet now, filled only with drifting asteroids and the distant light of stars. "Ma'am," Dongwoo said quietly, "do you think they'll come back?" So-min looked at her crew. These brave people who had held the line when everything seemed lost, who had discovered that humanity's greatest weakness, their dependence on a single star, was actually their greatest strength. "No," she said. "I don't think they will. They know now that we're protected by something they can never overcome. As long as the sun shines on Earth, humanity will be safe." The first hour of battle nearly destroyed them. Vorthak bioships attacked from every direction, their living hulls adapting to each weapon the Indomitable fired. When Kyung-soo used particle beams, the creatures grew thicker armor. When he switched to plasma cannons, their skin became reflective. When he fired kinetic slugs, they learned to dodge. "They're reading our weapons," Kyung-soo said through gritted teeth. "Every shot teaches them how to defend against the next one." The Indomitable shook as bioplasma beams struck her hull. Deck 7 lost atmosphere. Engineering reported fires on 3 levels. The medical bay filled with wounded crew members. And Sunwoo worked without rest to save them. Captain, we've lost main engines, Hyejin reported. I'm running on backup power. Life support is failing on decks 4, 9, and 12. Behind them, the civilian ships waited in formation. They could not jump until they cleared the asteroid field, and the Indomitable was the only thing between them and the Vorthak swarm. How much longer until they can escape? So-min asked. Dongwoo checked his navigation display. 18 minutes. To reach the jump point, ma'am. 18 minutes. So-min looked at her tactical screen. They were outnumbered 50-1. Their weapons were barely scratching the enemy. Her ship was falling apart around them. But something strange was happening to the Vorthak formation. Bora, are you seeing this? So-min called to her communications officer. Yes, ma'am. Their attack patterns are getting sloppy. The coordination isn't as tight as it was. It was true. The bioships had started the battle moving like dancers, each one perfectly positioned to support the others. Now they seemed confused, bumping into each other, firing at targets their allies were already attacking. Hyejin, what's our reactor status? Still running hot, ma'am. 140% of normal output. I've never pushed fusion this hard before. What frequency is it emitting? Hyejin checked her readings. Standard solar spectrum, same as Earth's sun, just like all the old reactors. So-min felt something click in her mind. The old fusion reactors. The frequency that matched solar radiation. The way some Vorthak had hesitated before attacking ships with that technology. Kyung-soo, target the closest bioship. But don't fire. Weapons. I want you to focus all sensor arrays on it, maximum intensity. Ma'am, just do it. The tactical officer redirected their scanning beams at the nearest Vorthak vessel. The creature writhed as the focused energy struck its hull, but not from damage. It seemed to be in pain. It's working, Dongwoo said excitedly. Look at the neural activity readings. The focused scanner beam is disrupting something in its nervous system. More bioships moved to attack, but their formations were breaking down. Ships that should have coordinated their strikes were getting in each other's way. The perfect hive mind behavior was falling apart. Captain, I think I understand, Sunwoo said from his medical station. If these creatures are controlled by some kind of collective consciousness, and if that consciousness is sensitive to solar frequency radiation, then our reactor is jamming their communications, So-min finished. Like static on a radio. Jae-sung's voice crackled over the intercom. From the marine decks. Captain, we've got Vorthak bioforms trying to board us, but they seem confused. Instead of working together, they're fighting each other. The tactical display showed the truth. The longer the battle continued, the more chaotic the Vorthak became. Bioships that had moved in perfect formation now scattered randomly. Some attacked the Indomitable, others attacked asteroids. A few even fired on their own allies. Hyejin, can you boost the reactor frequency output? I can try, but if I push it much higher, we're going to have a core breach. Do it. The chief engineer's hands flew over her controls. Deep in the ship's belly, the fusion reactor roared, like a caged star. The frequency emissions that had been disrupting the Vorthak hive mind doubled, then tripled. The effect was immediate. Bioships throughout the system began writhing in apparent agony. Their coordinated attacks became wild, desperate strikes. Several ships turned and fled toward the edge of the system. But the World Eater was still coming. The massive creature had been hanging back, letting its smaller ships do the fighting. Now it moved forward, its mouth opening wide enough to swallow the Indomitable whole. Unlike the others, it seemed less affected by the frequency jamming. It's too big, Kyung-soo said. Its biomass can absorb more punishment. The frequency isn't stopping it. So Min watched the World Eater approach. Up close, it was even more terrifying. She could see the half-digested remains of dozens of ships embedded in its hide. Crews were probably still alive in some of those. Vessels kept as food for later consumption. Captain, the civilian ships are almost to the jump point, Bora reported. 3 more minutes. 3 minutes. The World Eater would reach them in 2. All stop, So-min ordered. Ma'am? Dongwoo looked confused. All stop, drop us right in its path. The Indomitable's engines shut down. Without forward momentum, they drifted directly into the World Eater's approach vector. The creature's mouth gaped before them like a tunnel lined with crystal teeth. "Captain, what are you doing?" Heejin asked. So-Min activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. The civilian ships are almost clear. We're going to make sure they get home safely. It's been an honor serving with you." She turned to her bridge crew. "Hiya, Jin. I want you to overload the reactor. Not to destroy it. To create the biggest solar frequency pulse you can manage. That'll kill the fusion process. We'll lose all power. I know, but if we can jam their hive mind across the entire system, maybe the other ships can escape." Understanding dawned on Hiya Jin's face. The asteroids, the crystalline formations in the asteroid field. If we pulse the right frequency, they'll amplify it across the whole system. Exactly. One big pulse to shatter their coordination permanently. Kyung-Soo targeted the key asteroids, the ones with the highest crystal content. "Firing solutions locked in, ma'am." Jae-Sung's Marines fell back to the bridge, fighting a running battle against Vorthak bioforms that had breached the hull. The creatures moved like animals now, not the coordinated soldiers they had been. "Dongwoo, calculate the exact frequency modulation we need." "Done, Captain. But if this works, we won't have any power left to escape." So-Min nodded. The World Eater's mouth filled their view screen now, close enough to see the digestive acids dripping from its teeth. "Bo-Ra, send a message to the civilian fleet. Tell them to jump the moment they reach the exit point. Tell them not to look back." "Message. Sent, ma'am." The communications officer's voice was steady, but tears ran down her cheeks. They all knew this was the end. "Heejin, are you ready?" The chief engineer took a deep breath. "Reactor overload in 10 seconds. It's been a pleasure serving with you, Captain." So-Min looked around her bridge one last time. At her crew, her friends, her family. They had held the line. Whatever happened next, they had held the line. "Fire everything," she ordered. The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace into chaos. Kepler Junction burned. The massive trade station that had connected 7 star systems for 200 years was breaking apart. Its outer rings spun wildly as explosions tore through the docking bays. Ships tried to escape, but green bioplasma beams cut them down before they could jump to safety. "Mother of stars," Dongwoo whispered. Vorthak bioships swarmed through the system like angry wasps. They moved in perfect formation, their living hulls pulsing with stolen energy from destroyed vessels. Some were small, no bigger than fighters. Others were massive, longer than Earth's biggest battleships. All of them hungered. "Captain, I'm reading 47 Vorthak vessels," Kyung-Soo reported. "They've taken control of the shipping lanes. Nothing gets in or out without going through them." So-Min watched the tactical display. Civilian ships tried to flee toward the jump points, but the Vorthak herded them like sheep. Those that ran were destroyed. Those that surrendered were consumed. Slowly, their crews taken alive for purposes she did not want to imagine. "Bo-Ra, get me a channel to all civilian vessels in the system." "Channel open, Captain." "This is Captain So-Min of the Colonial Navy cruiser Indomitable. All civilian vessels are to form up behind us and prepare for immediate evacuation. Do not deviate from the course we provide. Do not stop for anything." Responses flooded the communication channels. Merchant captains, passenger liner crews, mining supervisors, all of them scared. All of them looking for someone to tell them what to do. "Ma'am," Hyojin called from her engineering station. "I'm picking up something strange in the wreckage patterns." So-Min moved to look over her shoulder. Hyojin had isolated sensor readings from the destroyed ships. "The Vorthak are avoiding some targets," Hyojin explained. "Look here. This cargo hauler had an old fusion reactor, the kind we used to build 50 years ago. The Vorthak circled around it 3 times before finally attacking. Could be coincidence? Maybe. But look at this." Hyojin changed the display. Terran destroyer with modern antimatter engines. The Vorthak swarmed it immediately. But this old Martian freighter with a fusion drive? They left it alone for almost an hour. Kyung-Soo studied the data. The fusion reactors emit a specific frequency when they run. It's different from antimatter or plasma systems. Different how? Older fusion tech was built to copy the sun, Earth's sun. The frequency matches solar radiation almost exactly. Sun Wu looked up from his medical station. Solar radiation affects many biological systems. Maybe it bothers them somehow. Before anyone could respond, the proximity alarms screamed. A massive shadow fell across the bridge as something enormous moved above them. Captain, contact bearing 027. Dongwu announced, his voice tight with fear. It's the biggest thing I've ever seen. The main screen filled with nightmare. The Vorthak flagship was not a ship in any sense that humans understood. It was a living creature the size of a space station, its hide covered in scales that shifted from black to deep green. Tendrils thick as subway tunnels writhed around its body. At its front end, a mouth large enough to swallow the indomitable hole gaped open, lined with teeth like crystal spears. The World Eater, Kyung-soo breathed. Intelligence files called it that. Every battle, it gets bigger. It literally eats the ships it destroys. The creature pulsed with absorbed energy. Along its sides, Somin could see the half-digested remains of other vessels. A Centauri battlecruiser hung from its belly like a parasite. The twisted wreckage of a dozen smaller ships dotted its hide. Captain, I'm getting 32 civilian ships formed up behind us, Bora reported. They're ready to jump, but the Vorthak are blocking all the exit points. Somin studied the tactical display. The asteroid field that surrounded Kepler Junction had 3 safe passages. The Vorthak controlled 2 of them. The third was blocked by their smaller bioships, but it might be passable if someone cleared the way. Heejin, how much power can you give me? For what? Everything. Weapons, shields, engines. I want every watt this old ship can produce. Heejin's fingers flew over her controls. I can boost power by 30%, but it'll burn out half. Our systems. We'll get maybe 20 minutes before the reactor starts melting down. That's 20 minutes more than we had. Jae-sung stepped forward. Captain, what's the plan? Somin pointed at the tactical display. We're going to run straight at that asteroid passage. The Vorthak ships blocking it are smaller than us. We punch through, the civilians follow, and everyone jumps to safety. What about us? Somin looked around her bridge. These people had served with her for 3 years. They trusted her to bring them home. She had never lied to them before, and she would not start now. We'll probably die, she said simply. But those 32 ships carry 8,000 civilians, families, children. If we don't get them out, the Vorthak will take them. The bridge was quiet. Outside, green bioplasma beams lit up the darkness as Vorthak ships hunted down the last few vessels trying to escape alone. Well, Kyung-soo said finally, I always wondered what it would be like to fight something that ate starships. Jae-sung laughed, a harsh sound in the quiet bridge. My Marines have been complaining they're bored. This should wake them up. Sun Woo began preparing trauma kits. I'll have medical teams standing by. Bora opened channels to the civilian fleet. All ships maintain formation, follow our lead. Do not break formation no matter what happens. Dongwu plotted their course through the asteroid field. Course laid in, Captain. It's going to be tight, but we can make it. Heejin boosted power to the engines. Reactor at 130% and climbing. We're committed now, ma'am. Somin settled into her command chair. The World Eater had noticed their formation. It was turning toward them, its massive mouth opening wider. Smaller bioships peeled away from their hunting to intercept. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. We are about to engage a superior enemy force to protect civilian vessels. This is what we swore to do when we put on these uniforms. Hold your positions. Do your jobs. Make them remember the indomitable. The first Vorthak bioships reached weapons range. Green plasma beams lanced out, striking their forward shields. The indomitable shuddered but held course. Return fire, Somin ordered. The cruiser's main guns spoke, sending streams of coherent energy into the enemy formation. One bioship exploded in a spray of green fluid. Another writhed away, its hull burning. But more were coming. Many more. The World Eater opened its mouth and roared. The sound carried across space itself, a vibration that made the Indomitable's hull ring like a bell. Behind them, the civilian ships held formation, trusting their escort to see them safely home. So-Min gripped the arms of her chair. All ahead full. Let's see how much fight this old ship has left in her. The stars burned cold and distant as Admiral Tejo watched his fleet die. 12 different species had joined together to stop the Vorthak advance at the Centauri defense grid. Now their ships floated as dead metal in the void, consumed by creatures that should not exist. The Vorthak bioships moved through space like living nightmares. Their hulls pulsed with veins of green light, and tentacles longer than battleships reached out to grab wounded vessels. When they touched a ship, the metal began to dissolve. The ship became food. The crew became something worse. Sir, the defense grid is failing, reported his communications officer. Her voice shook with fear. Sectors 7 through 12 have gone dark. Tejo closed his eyes. The Centauri system had protected this part of the galaxy for 300 years. Its massive weapons platforms could destroy entire fleets. But the Vorthak had overrun it in less than 6 hours. Order all ships to retreat, he said. Send word to Earth Command. Tell them the grid has fallen. Across the galaxy, Captain So-Min received the emergency message aboard the heavy cruiser, Indomitable. She read it 3 times before the words made sense. The Centauri defense grid was gone. The Vorthak were moving toward the core systems. Ma'am, what are our orders? Asked Navigation Officer Dongwu. He was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes that darted between the star charts and his captain's face. So-Min looked at her bridge crew. These were good people. Chief Engineer Hae Jin had kept their old ship running for 15 years. Marine Commander Jae Sung had fought pirates and raiders across 3 sectors. Communications Officer Bo-Ra could find signals in the deepest space. Medical Officer Sun-Woo had saved more lives than anyone could count. Tactical Officer Kyung-Soo knew every weapon system ever built. But the Indomitable was old. She had been scheduled for scrapping next month. Her weapons were outdated. Her armor was patched in a dozen places. Against the creatures that had just destroyed the mightiest defense in known space, what could one old cruiser do? Set course for Kepler Junction, So-Min said. Maximum speed. Dongwu's fingers flew over his controls. Course laid in, ma'am, but that puts us directly in the Vorthak path. I know. The Kepler Junction was humanity's most important trade hub. 7 colonies depended on it for supplies, medicine, and communication with Earth. 12 million people lived on the stations and planets in that system. If the Vorthak reached it, those people would die. Hae Jin climbed up from the engineering decks, wiping grease from her hands. She was older than the rest, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes from too many years fixing broken things in the dark between stars. Captain, I've been reading the sensor reports from Centauri, she said. These Vorthak ships, they're not just machines, they're alive, and they're learning. What do you mean? Hae Jin called up a hologram in the center of the bridge. It showed the remains of a Terran destroyer, its hull half dissolved by Vorthak bioacid. Look at this pattern. The first attack hit the weapons. The second hit the engines. The third hit life support. But watch what happens when another destroyer tries the same defense. The hologram changed. Another Terran ship, similar weapons, similar tactics. But this time the Vorthak attack was different. Faster. More precise. They knew exactly where to strike. They remember everything, Hae Jin said. Every battle makes them smarter. Every ship they destroy teaches them something new. Jae Sung stepped forward. He was a big man with scars on his arms and a voice like gravel. How many ships have they destroyed so far? Thousands, Kyung-Soo answered, reading from his tactical display. Maybe tens of thousands, across 3 sectors. The bridge fell quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. The Vorthak had learned from thousands of battles. They knew how every species fought. They knew every weapon, every defense, every trick that had ever been tried against them. There's something else, Bo-Ra said softly. She was the youngest of the crew, barely out of the Naval Academy. I've been monitoring their communications, or trying to. They don't seem to communicate at all. What do you mean? So-Min asked. Individual ships don't send signals to each other. No radio, no laser comm, no quantum entanglement, but they move together like they're all controlled by one mind. Sun Wu looked up from his medical station. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke unless someone was hurt or dying. Hive mind? Maybe. I've seen something like it in insect species. Thousands of individual creatures, but they all think as one. So-Min studied the tactical display. Red dots marked Vorthak fleets across the galaxy. They moved in perfect coordination, striking multiple targets at once. No human fleet had ever achieved that level of coordination. "Captain, incoming message from Fleet Command," Bora announced. "Admiral Chen wants to speak with you." The main screen flickered, and Admiral Chen's tired face appeared. Behind her, the command center buzzed with activity. Officers ran between stations and warning lights flashed red. "Captain So-Min, I'm sending you new orders. Evacuate the Kepler Junction. All civilian traffic is to be directed to the inner systems immediately." "Understood, Admiral. What about defense of the junction itself?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "There won't be any defense, Captain. We're pulling back to Earth's solar system. It's the only place we might be able to make a stand." The connection ended. So-Min stared at the blank screen. Humanity was retreating to its birth world. Everything beyond the solar system would be abandoned to the Vorthak. "Ma'am," Dongwu said quietly, "we're approaching the jump point for Kepler Junction." So-Min looked around her bridge one more time. At Hyejin with her worried frown. At Jae-Sung checking his weapon systems. At Bo-Ra monitoring the communications channels. At Sun-Woo preparing medical supplies for refugees. At Kyung-Soo plotting, firing solutions for battles that might never come. The Indomitable was just one ship. Old, outdated, forgotten by everyone except the crew who served aboard her. Against the creatures that had conquered worlds and consumed fleets, she was nothing. But she was all those 12 million people had. "Jump," So-Min ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the Indomitable leaped across space toward whatever waited at Kepler Junction. Behind them, the Vorthak fleets continued their advance, consuming everything in their path. The tide of conquest rolled forward, and only one old ship stood between it and the heart of human space.